Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 26, Part 2. I took a deep, steadying breath just before rounding the final corner, and walked in through the door of the room I had woken up in just a few hours earlier. I was able to get a much better view of it this time. There were a large number of pods, arranged in a pair of concentric circles and brightly lit by the overhead lights. Most were full, and I saw a wide variety of ponies as well as a small number of griffins and zebras. Unlike the rest of the hive, this section was fairly quiet. There were only 2 changelings in this large chamber, having just pulled Sickle out of one of the pods and laid her onto a gurney. A moment of fear passed before I saw her side slowly moving. With the concern for her life alleviated for the moment, I was able to wonder how they had managed to cram her into that pod to begin with. It must have been an incredibly tight fit. I quickly glanced around the rest of the room. 4 more changelings lay in pods, as still as the ponies around them. An observation room was set above a set of doors in the back, overlooking the chamber, and a couple of changelings sat within it, watching instruments. Among the dozens of ponies, Dusty and Starlight were easy to find, resting just beside Sickle's now vacant pod. The changelings around Sickle finally noticed me when I was only a few steps away from them. The closest raised a brow.
Is there something you need? Is she still alive?
I asked, nodding my head towards Sickle. Though I knew the answer already, it was a good lead-in.
Sedated, but alive for the moment.
The other changeling replied.
We're just getting her completely disconnected and ready to move first. Oh, good.
I said.
Ocelli wants her kept alive just a little longer. She said to keep her sedated, but lightly enough that she can be woken up for questioning.
The changeling sighed, but nodded.
Great. Yeah, we'll put her in one of the holding rooms. When will Ocelli be getting here? She said to tell you that she's occupied for the moment, but she'll be here at 9. Will that be long enough for the pony to be regaining her consciousness?
She checked her pip book for the time. That was just 45 minutes away.
We might need to administer a stimulant when Ocelli gets here. Did she want anything else? That was all. Very well. The pony will be ready for her.
She gave her a smirk.
Just tell her not to take too long getting to us. This pony was violent and destructive in the sim, even after we cranked up the pacification controls. I'd hate to see what she's like unrestricted. Just make sure she's restrained.
I said.
I'll go inform Ocelli.
She nodded, returning to securing Sickle to the gurney, and I turned and left. So far so good. Sickle wasn't in immediate danger, and I had 45 minutes, maybe a bit more, before the changelings in Simulation Chamber 1 started wondering what was up. On to Phase 2. I consulted Ocelli's pip-book as I made my way back to the equipment depot. The last few steps involved passing a pair of guards. My heart hammered as I approached the most likely point of failure in my plans, but forced myself to keep a perfectly neutral expression. I passed by without even a glance from them. I was just another anonymous soldier, one of the crowd. I approached the first changeling I saw inside the depot, a technician working over a banged-up and half-disassembled pip-book.
Excuse me.
She looked up.
Huh? What? Ocelli sent me.
I said, banking once more on the influence of her name.
I'm to retrieve the equipment from those ponies that we caught. Is it all here? She wants their gear?
She asked, her head tilting a fraction.
What for? Heck if I know.
I said with a wry smirk.
Probably looking for intel. Maybe it's something to do with the new Ling. Yeah, what's up with that?
She said, resting her forelegs on the table on either side of the pip-book.
They caught some changeling from another hive sneaking in here, and now she's just chilling here? There's some other hive out there? All I know is that the queen has invited her into the hive.
I said, catching the tiny flinch the other changeling gave.
Though I think Ocelli's keeping a close eye on her. Also sounds like her whole hive died off because they were too incompetent to feed themselves.
She gave a little snort.
Yeah, maybe. The equipment? Oh, right.
She gestured over her shoulder.
The 2 pip-books are here. The rest of it is still in the back. It's all inventoried and awaiting inspection. Row 8, Section B. Oh, I forgot which shelf.
She raised her own pip-book to check, but I casually waved it off.
If that pink pony's armor is there, it'll be easy to find. Oh, speaking of, do you have any carts or the like for hauling stuff? I don't think I could even carry that armor if it's as heavy as it looked. Oh yeah, got a set of carts and pallet jacks in the back. If you need some link to run the forklift, I can do that. The cart should do fine,
I said, and after retrieving the pair of confiscated pip-bucks, I headed back. The equipment depot was impressive. Rows upon rows of shelves stocked with all manner of tools, materials, electronics, armor, and other equipment. One entire row is filled with containers marked bottle caps. It was an enticing hoard of wealth, but I resisted the urge to start picking out items to pilfer. For the moment, I needed to focus on the mission. I made my way through the empty aisles to the rear of the depot. The carts the technician had mentioned were small things, good for fitting down hallways, but they wouldn't carry very much. Fortunately, they also could hitch together. I connected a pair together, then hitched myself up to the first, guiding the pair back to row 8. Sickle's armor made it easy to find our gear, laid out in a haphazard jumble across the entire shelf. Aside from the pip-bucks I had already retrieved, everything was there, including weapons. Labels had been attached to almost every item, probably for inventory purposes, and like items were bundled together in bags and boxes. I started transferring items over to the carts. It only took a couple of minutes. Sickle's armor was the hardest, weighing easily more than I did. I hesitated as I picked up my holstered pistol, its suppressor detached and set beside it. It presented additional options and more flexibility, but there was no chance such a thing would not be read as a hostile act. Even considering the use of it might be enough for a pip-buck to decide I have hostile intent. Reluctantly, I tucked the weapon, the suppressor, and the magazines of subsonic ammo into the lead cart. Plans could change, but for now, it wasn't an option. If it became an option, it would only take a few seconds to ready. That would have to do. Once everything was in the carts, I pulled out a pair of blankets, draping them over to the top to conceal the contents. I hitched myself up to the lead cart again, then paused to review the map on Ocelli's pip-buck. I analyzed the layout, picking out a route, and set off again. As I reached the front of the depot, I halted just out of sight of the technicians. Fortunately, being essentially a warehouse, there were few changelings in this area. It gave me the opportunity to peek out, my magic reaching out to snag another pip-buck from the shelves behind the technicians. Another shelf held dozens of broadcasters, and 4 of them floated away in my magic. Once I had them all tucked away in the carts, I continued on. The technician I had spoke with hardly looked up from the pip-buck she was working on. I made my way out into the hall, changelings stepping aside to make way for my carts. I continued on, just another cog in the giant social machine. I was as good as invisible. At least, I was as good as invisible until someone wondered where Ocelli was, or she woke up and freed herself. Neither gave me much time. I returned to the simulator chambers through a back passage, the same way I'd been wheeled out originally. I caught a questioning look from some random passers-by as I wheeled the carts down the back hall, but I didn't engage her by meeting their eyes. She eventually didn't feel curious enough to impose upon a guard's business. Sickle had been parked in the same room I had been held, strapped to a gurney that looked about ready to collapse under her weight. Another changeling, one of the ones who had been removing her from the pod, was standing beside the door, watching her. She looked up curiously at me as I rolled the carts in.
What's all that? Their equipment,
I said. There wasn't much point in lying about that, especially if she did decide to look.
Ocelli told me to bring it here.
She frowned.
Why? I didn't ask.
I said, as I folded the blankets up again.
How's the pony? Stable and sedated.
She said.
Glamour had me stay to keep tabs on her in case she started to wake up. Apparently, this pony has a bad combination of high body mass and high resistance that makes drug effectiveness unpredictable. I think I heard something about that,
I said, as I turned to look over Sickle. She looked healthy enough, though now that I looked closer, something caught my eyes. While she was heavily scarred all over, there seemed to be several fresh marks, all thin, straight, and pink.
Are those incisions?
The other changeling stepped forward, peering at Sickle before realizing what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, those. The autodoc pulled about a half-pound of metal out of her when we were getting her ready for the pods. It was a pain in the flank getting her in there, too. What a waste of time. Couldn't have known that at the time,
I said, then leaned in closer. I lifted a hoof, pointing at her belly just below the crook of a hind leg.
What's this? What's what?
She asked, leaning in past me as I made my way. A moment later, my stunning bolt struck the back of her head, My magic wrapped around her body, halting her fall. With a quick heft, I tucked her into the rear cart, draping a blanket over her unconscious form. Phase 3 was on. Unfortunately, it was where the risk of failure started to skyrocket. I returned to the lead cart, and the several bags of confiscated drugs separated by type. It made finding Sickle's collection of dash inhalers quick and easy. Retrieving one, I returned to Sickle, sticking the inhaler nozzle into her open mouth and nudging her jaw shut around it. I waited until she started to inhale her next breath and squeezed, the inhaler hissing as it discharged its load. I guarantee you, as soon as Sickle wakes up, she's gonna freak the fuck out. Anywho, let's get on to our not freaked out donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Star630, BadassWaffle, Onlyonething, Orion, and Caladis. Matchpick, JockeTF, Luciisu, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Sky, Sauce, Rolan, Brother, Mordred, Omicron, Lyrae, Runescythe, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Rise, Soul, Shadow Moon, Luigi, Chance of Crust, Big Smoke, Bobcat, Murder Princess, Jet, Little Mighty, Solar Symphony, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.